Is the Troy Show. On the paint can left behind by the painters. Somehow, Davis spills paint on his boots. He'll later claim he, quote, snaps, unquote, blaming it on drug abuse. From another room, Payne hears the sound of scuffling feet from the kitchen or dining room, according to retired Captain John Looper of the Irving Police. He comes out to see what is happening. When Payne enters the hallway, police say he sees Davis stabbing Joella with a buck knife, cutting her throat and severing her carotid artery and windpipe. The blade penetrates so deep that it bites into her spinal cord, nearly decapitating her. Blood sheets down her dress. In the yard, mailman Robert Clark crosses the lawn and notices the open front door. "I sort of saw a young fella in there, and I heard another one say, 'Close the door, close the door,'" Clark tells the Scene, the magazine this article came from. So all this happens. Maury Davis, who at the time was a young man, a troubled young man. He had a bad family life, a father who was unavailable. Did this horrible, horrendous act, senselessly killing somebody for no reason other than paint spilled on his boots. And it is a horrendous thing. Then in the eyes of humanity, yes, definitely do not forgive him for this. This is a horrible thing to do. So let's just sort of summarize where we are in this story. You have Maury Davis, who is looking into this house for some reason. We don't know why he's really there. He tells his friend that they're there to meet somebody. You could probably guess that it's for some kind of drug deal, perhaps, maybe. I don't know. He was on drugs at the time. He walks into the house with the mother of Lyles, the other guy who is involved in this article. And at some point, paint or something gets on Maury Davis's boots, and he, according to police reports, snaps. And he almost completely cuts off the head of this woman. So he's eventually located by the police. He's taken to jail. On the way to the police station, the arresting officer Looper asks him, "Man, I don't need to talk to you about what you did. I just want to know why." Maury says, "I don't know. I just went effing crazy." The article continues to hear Davis and his attorney, Dennis Brewer, tell it. God's hand shaped the outcome of the state of Texas versus Donald Maurice Davis. After all, the series of blessings laid at Davis's feet in Dallas County Court might convince the most resolute atheist. Brewer, a parishioner of the same church as Davis's parents. So the lawyer went to the same church as Davis's parents. And one of the most influential defense attorneys in Dallas arrives at the Irving police station 24 hours after Joella Lyles is murdered. "It's only been 24 hours since you killed this woman," Brewer says to his cold-eyed client. "You don't seem too upset about it." Davis replies, "I didn't even know that old lady." To Brewer, he looks more like an unrepentant drunk driver than a man facing murder charges. He he chides Davis for his calm. "It's kind of like you ran over a cat or a dog," the lawyer says. "Nah, man," Davis replies, "I like cats and dogs." So you have a man who obviously is uncaring. He has no sense of morality, no sense of any goodness. You have a man who as we've talked about in other episodes, he wants what he wants. And what he wants is to satisfy what he needs. So he's on drugs. He is crazy. Something is going on in his mind, and he commits murder. He snaps. He commits murder. Now, is he responsible for that murder? Of course he's responsible for that murder. He did it. Was he insane? A good question would be to ask, if he was insane, can he be held responsible for that? I don't know. But if he knew what he was doing, of course he is responsible for that murder. So in the 4 months between murder and trial, Davis finds jailhouse Jesus. To Brewer, the lawyer, the young man's cool demeanor following the murder and his subsequent lunge toward God has an insanity defense written all over it, but it won't be the kind most lawyers launch. For Brewer isn't just any lawyer. He, too, has recently become born again. Not long before, while jogging in his Dallas neighborhood, Brewer, quote, was filled with the Holy Spirit, unquote, and began speaking in tongues in the middle of an intersection. It was a spiritual epiphany that caused him to forsake heavy drinking and drugs for Christ. In Davis, he sees not an insane man who nearly beheaded a middle-aged woman. He sees a son of Jesus possessed by the devil. Still, there isn't much hope. Payne has rolled and will serve Payne, who was Davis's friend in the beginning. Payne has rolled and served as the state's chief witness. Brewer tells Davis he'll ask for a 50-year plea bargain, but the DA is dead set on sending him to the chair. Yet it gets more interesting. Jury selection, at least in the lawyer's eyes, will bear the influence of a divine hand. Don McDaniel, retired California cop, is called to jury duty. The district attorney doesn't eliminate McDaniel because lawmen are notoriously sympathetic to the prosecution. What prosecutors apparently don't know is that McDaniel also attends church with Brewer and Davis's family. The attorney will later admit that McDaniel approaches him, saying that as a born-again Christian, he'll help however he can. McDaniel, too, understands the ways of the demon. He wrestled with his own. As a Marine in Korea, he was hit with mortar shrapnel and nearly killed. When he returned to civilian life, he was irrevocably changed. Killing was nothing, McDaniel tells the scene. You look upon people as insects and you smash them. As a state trooper, he had one of the highest felony arrest records in California, but he'd also been investigated by the FBI and nearly indicted for abusing those he busted. He felt the urge to use his gun. The demon of murder, he says, possessed him. Okay, I'm not going to read any more of this article because I think you get the idea. You have a guy writing this article about a story that is horrendous and horrible and should never have happened. Yes, Pastor Maury Davis, you are responsible for the crimes you committed. You are responsible for that. Now, the criticism that the rest of this article poses on Pastor Davis is this idea of being redeemed. Can a man be redeemed? That is the question. Can a man be redeemed? Is it possible for someone to commit such a crime like this, go to prison, and then find God? Without it being insanity, or without it being some kind of divisive thing to trick the prison into letting you out early on good behavior. Is it possible for something like that to happen? Well, if you were to read this article, you would say that the writer doesn't feel like that. It's a big joke to the writer. This whole Christian thing, this whole redeeming thing. I mean, to him, it's all a political thing. He talks about later how Maury Davis even met with Mike Huckabee. Oh, heavens. I don't care for Mike Huckabee personally, but why bring that up in the article? Oh, he's a white Christian rich man who killed somebody who was poor. And then he talks about other Christian people as being in on it, being people helping somebody get off just because they themselves are Christians. So the article makes me sad, because this is the type of feeling that a lot of people have about Christians in the world. And I will say this. I can only speak for myself, because my experience is the only experience that I truly know well. If Maury Davis says that he feels like he has been forgiven, then should I doubt him on that? Is there any crime, any sin? Is there anything that a man can do that should not be seen as forgiven in the eyes of God? You may say, Troy, murder should not be forgiven, especially in the way that he murdered this lady by nearly cutting off her head. That should not be forgiven. And I would say, in my eyes, yes, I agree with that. That should not be forgiven. But you know what? My ways are not the ways of God. I don't understand the ways of God. I don't understand how God works. And you could say, well, Troy, all sins are the same. All sins are the same in God's eyes. Well, that answer is not good enough, is it? To an unbeliever, if you say that the reason he was forgiven is because all sin is the same in the eyes of God, if you steal a pencil, that is the same as cutting off somebody's head. It's the same. That's not good enough. It's not good enough. So what is the answer then?